Margaret Chen had built her company from nothing. 15 years of 5 a.m. mornings, cold coffee, missed birthdays, and boardroom battles had turned her small startup into a corporation worth hundreds of millions. She prided herself on knowing everything that happened inside her building. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? She knew which manager was underperforming, which department was bleeding budget, and which client was about to walk. But she did not know anything about the old man who mopped her floors. His name, she eventually learned from the HR file, was Arthur Baines. 63 years old, employed for 11 years. Never missed a day, never complained, never asked for anything. But every single Friday, without fail, Arthur left 2 hours before his shift ended. Margaret noticed it first by accident, glancing at the security monitor while waiting for a call. She saw him quietly gather his jacket, nod to his co-workers, and slip out the side door at exactly 3 p.m. The following Friday, she watched again. Same thing. Third Friday, same thing. Margaret was not the kind of woman who let patterns go unexplained. On the fourth Friday, she did something she had not done in years. She followed someone without a boardroom agenda. She pulled on a plain coat, left her phone with her assistant, and walked out into the autumn streets behind Arthur Baines. He moved slowly but with purpose, taking the number 12 bus across town, stepping off in a neighborhood that Margaret had never visited, one of those quiet streets where the houses were. Small, but the gardens were carefully kept. She watched from a distance as Arthur walked up to a pale, yellow house and knocked gently. A woman opened the door, elderly, wrapped in a cardigan despite the mild weather, and her entire face changed when she saw him. She took both his hands in hers and pulled him inside. Margaret stood on the pavement, uncertain. 10 minutes later, Arthur emerged, carrying a small bag of rubbish, which he placed in the bin by the gate. Then he went back inside. 40 minutes later, he came out again, now holding a little boy, perhaps 5 or 6 years old, by the hand. They walked to the small park 2 streets away, and Margaret followed at a careful distance, feeling oddly like an intruder in something sacred. At the park, Arthur pushed the boy on the swings, slow and steady, talking to him the whole time. The boy laughed, throwing his head back in that way children do when they are completely safe and completely happy. Margaret sat on a bench far enough away, not to be noticed, and watched for nearly an hour. On the walk back, she finally approached. Arthur turned and saw her, and his expression showed mild surprise but not alarm. She said she was sorry for following him, that she knew it was strange, but she had to understand. Arthur was quiet for a moment, then he explained simply. The elderly woman was his neighbor, Mrs. Okafor. Her son had died 2 years ago, leaving behind a wife who worked double shifts at the hospital and a little boy named Samuel who needed someone around on Friday. Afternoons, when the childcare closed early, Arthur had started coming by to help with small things. Grocery bags, a stuck window, a leaking tap. Then Samuel had started waiting by the door for him. Arthur shrugged as if it were nothing, as if an old janitor quietly holding together a grieving family. Every Friday afternoon was simply what a person did when they saw a need. Margaret walked back to the bus stop in silence, and something inside her that had been wound tight for 15 years began, very slowly, to loosen. The next Monday, she called HR and made Arthur's early Friday departure permanent and paid. Then she started asking questions she had never thought to ask before, about her staff, their lives, their quiet struggles, the invisible weight people carry into work every single day. She restructured the company's community program, not as a PR exercise, but as something real, funded properly, run by the people who actually understood the neighborhoods around them. She began leaving her own office earlier, not to follow anyone, but to show up, the way Arthur showed up, without cameras or recognition or applause. A year later, at the company's annual event, Margaret asked Arthur to stand. He looked uncomfortable, this modest man in his pressed shirt. But the entire room rose for him. He had not changed the company's share price or won a single contract, but he had changed its soul, and through it, hers. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel Kindness True Stories, where we bring you real and inspiring tales that remind us what truly matters.